So last night's debate between Trump and Harris taught us a few things about their foreign policy plans, and I'm going to go over each region they covered individually in 4 videos. I'll start with China, then I'll talk about Ukraine and Russia, move on to Israel and Hamas, and then close out with a small discussion about the withdrawal from Afghanistan. So I'll go ahead and start with China. Both candidates sharply criticized each other's policies and records with regard to China. But let's be clear, this is one area where both the Republicans and Democrats largely share the same views. It's just they differ in their methods for executing a limiting of China's expanses, whether it's in technology or military. Now, Trump reiterated his longstanding criticism of China, emphasizing that the country, along with other nations, had been ripping off the U.S. for years. He pointed to his tariffs on Chinese imports as a key policy success, framing them as a necessary step to protect American industries from unfair competition and exploitation. He doubled down on his commitment to imposing even more aggressive tariffs if reelected, proposing at least a 50% tariff on goods from China. Now, Trump argued that this would send a strong message and bring jobs back to the U.S., describing his trade war as part of his economic rebalance strategy for China. Trump then alluded to the fact that the Biden administration largely agreed with Trump's original tariffs because they hadn't removed them, and suggested that Harris's criticism of the tariffs was inconsistent given they've largely been maintained by the current administration, which is very much true. Now, Harris did criticize Trump's plan for increasing tariffs, though, arguing that the previous tariffs had failed to deliver the intended benefits, and increasing tariffs would instead harm American consumers and businesses. She referenced concerns from economists, including 16 Nobel laureates, who warned that these tariffs could contribute to inflation and could trigger a recession. And this is largely because when tariffs are put in place, businesses just don't sit back and eat those costs. They transfer them to the consumer. Now, Harris pointed out that during Trump's time in office, the trade deficit with China actually increased, despite his promises to bring it down. This undermined Trump's argument that the tariffs were a success, because you would think that those tariffs would create more of a trade balance. The fact of the matter is they didn't. The economic imbalance between the U.S. and China had worsened in the Trump administration. One of the more pointed attacks Harris made was her accusation that Trump allowed the sale of U.S.-made semiconductor chips to China, which she argued helped China modernize its military. Now, in her claims, she wanted to contrast the Biden administration's strict export controls on advanced technologies, especially semiconductors. Meanwhile, Trump was much more soft, in her opinion, on export controls for semiconductors. Trump countered that argument by claiming that China buys its chips from Taiwan and not the U.S. And while that is largely true now, before the 2018 export controls were put in place by Trump, U.S. companies like Intel, Qualcomm, Broadcom, and NVIDIA exported a significant amount of semiconductor products to China. And it wasn't until 2 years into the Trump administration that he began to impose restrictions. But Biden largely left those restrictions in place and even expanded on them during his administration. Now, Trump presented himself as the only candidate capable of standing up to China, insisting that other countries, including China, were afraid of him during his presidency. He claimed his tough rhetoric and policies had restrained China's ambitions, including in trade and in military expansion. He implied that China's leadership preferred a weak U.S. president because they could be taken advantage of, and criticized the Biden-Harris administration for being too lenient on China, particularly in economic policy. Now, the key issue here, and I said it before, there's really bipartisan support here. While Harris criticized Trump's handling of trade and economic issues, she really is not fundamentally diverging from Trump's or Biden's hawkish stance on China. The Biden administration largely maintained the tariffs Trump implemented and expanded on export restrictions, particularly on semiconductors and other high-tech goods that have military applications. Harris really did not offer anything that was distinctly different from what Trump was saying or what Biden had done, but really just highlighted that Trump's approach was not effective enough and somewhat reckless going forward. Now, Trump framed his relationship with China as a battle to correct decades of economic imbalance, while Harris portrayed his policies as economically harmful and strategically flawed going forward. Nonetheless, both agreed on the need to compete with China. It's just their methods and their rhetoric sharply contrasted here.